I'll be reading the excerpts from the testimony of FBI agent, Special Agent, that is, Ali Soufan, to the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Administrative Oversight on May 13, 2009. Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for inviting me to appear before you today. I personally interrogated many terrorists we have in our custody and elsewhere, and gained confessions, identified terror operatives, their funding, details of potential plots, and information on how Al-Qaeda operates, along with other actionable intelligence. The approach I used is the informed interrogation approach, and is rooted in the experiences and lessons learned during World War II and from our counterinsurgency experience in Vietnam that generated the Army Field Manual. This approach is based on leveraging our knowledge of the detainee's culture and mindset, together with using information we already know about him. There are three primary points of influence on the detainee. First is the fear that he feels as a result of his capture and isolation from his support base. The interrogator becomes the one person he can talk to and who listens to what he has to say, and he uses this to encourage the detainee to open up. Second, acting in a non-threatening way isn't how the detainee is trained to expect a U.S. interrogator to act. This adds to his confusion and makes him more likely to cooperate. Third is the detainee's need to sustain a position of respect and value to the interrogator. A relationship is built, and he doesn't want to jeopardize it. And fourth is the impression he has of the evidence against him. The interrogator uses that knowledge to impress upon him that everything about him is known and that any lie will be easily caught. For example, in my first interrogation of the terrorist Abu Zubaydah, who had strong links to Al-Qaeda's leaders and knew the details of the 9/11 plot before it happened, I asked him his name. He replied with an alias. I then asked him, "How about if I call you Hani?" The name his mother nicknamed him as a child. He looked at me in shock, said okay, and we started talking. The Army Field Manual is not about being nice or soft. It is about outwitting the detainee by using a combination of interpersonal, cognitive, and emotional strategies to get the information needed. The harsh technique method does not use the knowledge we have of the detainee and tries instead to subjugate him into submission through humiliation and cruelty. It is trying to gain compliance rather than eliciting cooperation. A major problem with this technique is that it is ineffective. Al-Qaeda terrorists are trained to resist torture. Second, the harsh techniques only serve to reinforce what the detainee has been prepared to expect if captured. This gives him a greater sense of control and predictability and strengthens his will to resist. Third, the evidence gained is unreliable. There is no way to know whether he is being truthful or just speaking either to mitigate his discomfort or to deliberately provide false information. Fourth, it's slow. It takes place over a long period of time. For instance, preventing the detainee from sleeping for 180 hours or waterboarding 183 times in 1 month in the case of KSM. Fifth, it ignores the end game. In our country, we have due process, which requires evidence to be collected in a certain way. The CIA, because of the sensitivity of its operations, by necessity operates secretly. By putting the CIA in charge of interrogations, either secrecy is sacrificed for justice, and the CIA's operations are hampered, or justice is not served. Sixth is that it reintroduced the Chinese wall between the CIA and the FBI, similar to the wall that prevented us from working together to stop 9/11 before it happened. It is also important to realize that those behind this technique are outside contractors with no expertise in intelligence operations, investigations, terrorism, or Al-Qaeda, and no experience in the art of interview and interrogation. A few days after we started questioning Zubaydah, the CTC interrogation team finally arrived from DC with a contractor, and we were removed. The new hard techniques did not produce results as he shut down and stopped talking. Nudity and low-level sleep deprivation was being used. After a few days of getting no information, we again were given control of the interrogation. Within a few hours, he started talking again and gave us important, actionable intelligence. After a few days, the contractor introduced loud noise and then temperature manipulation. Throughout this time, my fellow FBI agent and I, along with a top CIA interrogator, protested, but we were overruled. Again, however, the technique wasn't working, so we were once again brought back in. We found it harder to re-engage him this time because of how the techniques had affected him, but eventually we succeeded. Once again, the contractor insisted on stepping up the notches of his experiment, requesting the authorization to place Zubaydah in a confinement box. This struck me as borderline torture. I protested to my superiors in the FBI and refused to be a part of what was happening. The director, Robert Mueller, a man I deeply respect, agreed, passing the message that we don't do that, and I was pulled out. In summary, the informed interrogation approach outlined in the Army Field Manual is the most effective, reliable, and speedy approach. It is legal and has worked time and time again. It would be a mistake to abandon it in favor of harsh interrogation methods that are shameful, harmful, slower, unreliable, ineffective, and play directly into the enemy's handbook. The situation was and remains too risky to allow someone to experiment with amateurish, Hollywood-style interrogation methods that in reality taint sources, risk outcomes, ignore the endgame, and diminish our moral high ground. For the last 7 years, it was not easy objecting to these methods when they had powerful backers. But I took an oath swearing to protect this great nation. I could not stand by quietly while our country's safety was endangered and our moral standing damaged. Thank you.